Welcome to Vision for Humanity Radio. This is Samuel D. Moore, and today I'm doing a presentation on why I believe the Iraqi Dinar is a wise investment. And just a disclaimer that I'm actually planning, or thinking about anyway, becoming an Iraqi Dinar dealer, because I believe so much in this investment. And most people call it a long shot, and that's what I'm going to call it as well. But I've done a lot of research, and I strongly believe that there is something up in Iraq. They are building the new Babylon.
We have heard all the bad news about Iraq today, but we recently were given an inside look at an incredible new city rising right in the midst of that war zone, a construction project you truly have to see to believe.
The fall of Ramadi, near daily car bombs in Baghdad. Airstrikes to halt the spread of ISIS in Iraq, not exactly brochure material when you're planning a sprawling multi-billion-dollar new community.
This massive building project, 100,000 housing units, is not in some U.S. suburb, it's not in some European capital. I'm standing just outside of Baghdad.
But yes, just 6 miles outside of Baghdad, construction of Iraq's future is in full swing.
That's Baghdad right there.
Yes.
Right there, you can see it.
This is the new city of Bismaya, which when completed will house 600,000 residents.
This is our vision for building Iraq, and so in order to do that you have to go to mega projects.
This mega community is the biggest construction project in the history of Iraq, and among the biggest and most daring in the world.
How much does a project like this mean to Iraq?
It means a lot. This is part of the 1 million housing units project, which we envisaged for all the provinces of Iraq.
Along with housing, Bismaya will provide new schools, mosques, and public safety, like police and fire, and a massive new road system will link the city to Baghdad. So who will live here?
Lower middle class people, from governmental employees, governmental retirees, ordinary citizens, and so on.
Who's going to live there? Lower to middle class people, government employees, and government retirees, ordinary citizens, and so on. Okay, now there's one of your clues. Now let's look at another video.
An oil-rich city in Iraq is planning to build a monstrous tower which would dwarf even the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. The structure, called the Bride, would be 3,162 feet tall, with 241 floors. The Burj Khalifa is a mere 2,722 feet. Saudi Arabia's Kingdom Tower, due for completion in 2019, will also be higher than the Burj, although its exact final height is being kept secret. The Bride, though, is meant to be an antidote to super tall towers. A vertical city which would also require no electricity, drawing heat and power from the sun. The mega-structure would have 7 sections, and its designers AMBS architects say it would relegate super-tall towers as a thing of the past. The Basra province, in southern Iraq, has remained removed from the political and religious tensions elsewhere in the country. Basra has the bulk of the country's oil reserves, is one of the world's fastest-growing business centers, and is home to Iraq's main port. Marcos Duandras, a director of AMBS Architects, who are working with Mott MacDonald Consultancy on the project, said, in contrast to a conventional tower, the Bride will be a place that may be enjoyed by all, not only for the ones that live and work there, but also the rest of the public. Super tall towers are perceived as an object in the distance, an alien planted in the city, disconnected from the urban scale at ground level. The Bride, on the other hand, will be conceived as a city itself, both vertically, but also horizontally from the ground. It will be enjoyed by thousands of people in endless ways, within it, on it or under it, from walking in the vast shaded parks and promenades at ground level, to having lunch or shopping in a skyscraper hundreds of meters above sea level.
So that's the Bride Tower. That's the center of the new Babylon. Let's just go to the central bank of Iraq. Now notice this building here. This is the central bank building. And I can show you that by looking at the strategic plan, the Central Bank of Iraq strategic plan right here. So this is Central Bank of Iraq strategic plan for 2016 through 2020. Look at that building. So that's going to be the new Central Bank of Iraq building in the heart of Babylon. Now there's the Bride Tower again with the veil. These are the new Iraqi Dinar notes that came out in 2015 and 2014. 50,000 note here.
So what we're going to talk about today is the differences between the older currency and some of the changes that were made last year with the new issued currency. What you're looking at is the 25,000 dinar notes. The one on top is the older issued 2010 note, whereas the one on the bottom is the one that was released last year. And what you're looking at is actually the back of the note. The people in America tend to think that since it's in English, that's the front of the note, but it's really not. That's the back. And there's really not much difference between the two when you're looking at the back, except for this area here, which we'll get into shortly. So when we turn the notes over and look at the front of the notes, that's where we'll really see the differences. Now, the older notes, and the date, just so you know, is up here. I won't go over what the Iraqi numerals represent, but you can look that up online yourselves. The serial numbers here. But the big differences, and I won't go over the features of the older notes because most of you that have the dinar are quite familiar with the older features. And we're just going to look at some of the newer features today. The first thing, starting on the left side of the bill, is you'll notice these three horizontal dash marks, and they are embossed markings for the vision impaired. When you rub your thumb across that, you can feel the three bars, and that tells you, for someone who's vision impaired, can tell what the denomination is. Tough to see on the video, but there are actually some colored threads throughout the notes as well, which is different. The old notes do not have any of the colored threads running through there, only the newer ones. You can barely make out the horsehead watermark here. It's the same as on the old notes, but you're familiar with that, so I won't bother holding it up to the light. This next item here, you'll notice the old patch and the new patch look similar, but there's actually quite a difference. The old one simply had color changing ink, whereas the newer patch is called a spark patch, and that's a trademark name. The spark patch is made with magnetic color changing ink. So if you had the right equipment, you could actually detect the magnetism in the ink itself, and you can see as I tilt it the difference in the colors there. Okay, and the next item coming over is the difference in the artwork. You still have Kurdish farmers here on both pictures, but the artwork has been completely redone and much more detailed. If you had a magnifying glass, you could really see some of the detail here, much nicer than the older one. The next feature, now on the older notes we had just a regular security thread going through, but on the new notes we have a wider thread, and that is actually called a motion feature scanner readable guarantee thread, and also a trademark name. And if you look at it on an angle, you can, I'm not sure if it's going to show up very well here with the glare, but it has the appearance of movement. The parts that are reflecting the light appear to move as you tilt the bill. The next feature over is this 13mm wide windowed protective film that runs vertically through the entire height of the note, and actually runs both sides as well. It runs completely around the bill. This creates a window in the note, which if we can see there, okay, so Inside the window is, on one side, is what is called the spiral minaret in Samarra. And that tower is approximately 1,000 years old, 1,100 years old, somewhere in that range. And it's real hard to see, but there's also the indication of the denomination is embossed on the other side. Actually, it's on this side is the embossing, and technically this side has the spiral minaret, but it's hard to tell from the video, I'm sure. But included in the windowed protective film is also a hologram image of a palm tree, and there are some other spirals and things, and you can see it's real nice. It changes colors as you tilt it there. So overall, much more difficult to reproduce than the older notes for forgers. And I am not yet aware of anyone that's made any of the new notes, has forged any of the new notes.
In a 13-month period from May 2003 to June 2004, the Federal Reserve sent nearly $12 billion in cash, mainly in $100 bills from the United States to Iraq. To do that, the Federal Reserve Bank in New York had to pack 281 million individual bills, including more than 107 $100 bills, onto wooden pallets to be shipped to Iraq. The cash weighed more than 363 tons and was loaded onto C-130 cargo planes to be flown into Baghdad. The numbers are so large that it doesn't seem possible that they're true. Who in their right mind would send 360 tons of cash into a war zone? But that's exactly what our government did. Stuart Bowen, the Special Inspector General for Iraq Reconstruction, analyzed the cash transfer and concluded that when the money arrived in Iraq, the Coalition Provisional Authority, which was run by our government, had not established sufficient managerial, financial, and contractual controls to ensure that the cash was used in a transparent manner. Even worse, Mr. Bowen concluded that the Coalition Provisional Authority handed over the money to the Iraqi ministries, quote, without assurance the money was properly used or accounted for. I'm releasing a memorandum this morning that describes this mind-boggling situation in more detail. And I'm pleased that Mr. Bowen and Ambassador Paul Bremer, who led the Coalition Provisional Authority, are with us today to shed more light on what happened to the $12 billion. I know Ambassador Bremer has indicated in the past that it's unrealistic to expect the government to keep close track of money sent into a war zone. And I know the Inspector General believes the opposite is true, and that strong standards are especially important if our government is sending billions of dollars of cash into a chaotic and violent environment. My concern is that without strong standards, we have no way of knowing whether the cash that was shipped into the green zone ended up in enemy hands.
The U.S. total debt is $66 trillion, increasing by about $100,000 per second. So that's the actual total debt. Now, if you look at the dilution of the U.S. dollar, the number of dollars printed every second, you come up with a number that equals $1,000 per second of new currency being printed every second. This is just the dollar supply added in 2016 alone. $959 billion, almost $1 trillion of new currency added. Now you're probably wondering, where does that money go? Well, that's what I'm going to show you next. Go to the Central Bank of Iraq homepage and you can see currency auctions here. This is a download from the Iraqi Central Bank website. It is a list of the U.S. currency auctioned off at the Central Bank of Iraq every day for the last, since 2004. Now this is, I'm going to start you off with 2016. At the top of this spreadsheet, you'll see the year 2016. the session number, the date, the market price of the US dollar, the auction price of the US dollar, and the volume of the US dollar in thousands of dollars. So according to this website, they're auctioning off $153 billion a day worth of US currency. These are actually millions of dollars, but either way, billions, millions, they're auctioning off a lot of US dollars in Iraq, and they're bringing in the dinar. So what they're doing is that they're selling US dollars for cheap, and they're allowing these currency dealers and peripheral banks, non-central banks, to sell US dollars for a profit. And then they bring those dinar that they brought in back to the central bank, and the next day auction off more US dollars. Every single day since 2003. What they're doing is, as per their Central Bank of Iraq prospectus, or their strategic plan here, this is the Central Bank of Iraq strategic plan for 2016 through 2020, you can see that their goal, as stated in that same document, business objectives: restructure the non-banking financial institutions, particularly those in money transfer and exchange through, withdraw excessive cash in the market, and regulate sufficient amount of banknotes. So that's what they're doing. Every day they're auctioning off US dollars, flooding the market with US dollars. As you can see, this is our dollar supply as per the usdebt.org. The dollar supply added in 2016 is almost $1 trillion, $959 billion, and this number actually increases by $1,000 per second. So every second they're printing $1,000. And what are they doing with this money? Well, as you could see by the video in the previous section, they're shipping it to Iraq by the plane loads in big huge pallets with $100 bills, billions and billions of dollars. So that's what's going on here, and this is why I believe the Iraqi dinar will be a good investment in the future, because their plan is to create the new Babylon, as pictured in this image, with the Central Bank of Iraq Strategic Plan 2016 through 2020. You see all the fancy buildings and all the architectural plans for Iraq. You saw Bismaya, that big city where all the worker bees are going to live, the government employees, retirees, and middle to low income people are going to be living. And then this is the bride tower with its veil, which is going to be the heart of modern Babylon. So this is what the future brings for the Middle East.